Good evening, everyone. This is the Plan Commission meeting for Tuesday, February 15th. I'll call the meeting to order. Secretary Miller, will you do the roll?
Council President Paschal?
Yes.
Alderperson Rosendich?
Yes.
Caprillion? Johnson? Golden? Anchor? And Schmidt. We have a quorum.
All right. Item number 3 on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of the January 18th, 2022 meeting.
Move to approve.
Okay, we have a motion from Mr. Penker and a second from Mr. Rosendich. Is there any discussion about the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Seeing none, that motion carries. Item 4 is to identify potential conflicts of interest. Any member of the body that shall declare a conflict if they have an interest, financial or otherwise, direct or indirect, or engage in a business or transaction or professional activity, or incur an obligation of any nature that is in conflict with the proper discharge of the body's official duties. Does anyone have a conflict of interest? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to citizen comments. Are there any citizens who wish to make comments tonight? Any citizen? Got a good crowd here, but nobody wants to talk, I guess. Okay, we'll continue on down the list then with number 6. The annexation and rezoning request for territory owned by William and Barbara Luter and R&PK Properties LLC, including a request for CMU, Community Mixed Use Zoning, related to a petition for direct annexation for 2 parcels and adjacent road rights-of-way consisting of 4.671 acres to be detached from the town of McMillan and annexed to the city of Marshfield, located to the north of the Wood Marathon County line, south of the intersection of 1500 and 1502 West McMillan Street, and Veterans Parkway Frontage Road, presented by Steve Wiley, City Planner. Stephen.
Thank you. So this is an annexation request and rezoning request, actually, all in one. You can see on the screen there, the subject site. It's 2 parcels currently. It is a island, the town of McMillan Island, surrounded by a city of Marshfield properties that have since annexed into the city. And it just is the last sort of vestige of the town there remaining, those 2 parcels. And you can see Veterans Parkway running through there is the main thoroughfare. And then Veterans Parkway Frontage Road kind of running to the north of the subject site there. Next slide, please. Some of the surrounding zoning, most of it is commercial zoning, so community mixed use, CMU zoning, for all the properties, commercial properties around the subject site. Just to the east is the Prairie Run subdivision, which we'll talk about in a little bit as a separate item. And then there's some single-family residential to the south. So just to give you a sense of the zoning around the subject property. The future land use map of the comprehensive plan recommends for a lot of the surrounding properties, general commercial land use. The subject site, because it's in the town, it did get missed and did not get a future land use classification assigned to it back when this map was done. So that was something that unfortunately did get missed, but I would imagine it would be assigned to general commercial land use, which would be consistent with the community mixed use zoning and surrounding land uses and zoning recommended for that area. Next slide, please. The applicant did submit this site map showing the subject property in a little more detail. So it is 4.671 acres and does include portions of the right-of-way there. It bounds the, or I should say it abuts the county line there. Next slide. So a developer has expressed interest in acquiring these parcels. The current property owners did approach the city and approve or signed off on a petition to annex into the city. The developer would obtain or would acquire the parcels after the annexation is completed, and then they would develop the site with a commercial use. So in looking at this annexation, we as staff are supportive. It would be a nice opportunity to clean up a town island, as I mentioned. The State Department of Administration actually just got back to us and found this to be in the public interest. You know, we do have utilities that can serve that area up there. So with that, we are recommending approval of this request and to assign community mixed-use zoning for those parcels, and that you direct staff to prepare an annexation ordinance for council consideration.
Okay, this requires a public hearing, so I will open the public hearing. Is there anyone who wishes to comment concerning this matter? Anyone who wishes to comment? I'm going for a third time. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and entertain a motion. Motion by Mr. Rosendich.
Motion to approve.
Okay. Second by Chris Golden. Any discussion? Quentin?
My only discussion is like, how was it missed so many years ago, that little plot? What would be the reason for that?
I can answer that. I actually did the map.
Way to go, Josh.
And whenever you're doing a map, you have different layers. And so the city is on one layer and then the surrounding townships on another layer. Because it was a town island, that layer did not get inputted into the map. So the comprehensive plan future land use map is not a parcel-based map. It's intended to be kind of a melded general recommendation for that area. So we still feel we're consistent with the recommendations of the comp plan, but yes, ideally that map would have had a red, filled in red parcel there. It just wasn't included in the layers that we made. So it was an oversight. And it's something we've noted to fix when we do a future update to the plan.
Thank you.
Chris?
Yes.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, everyone in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And anyone opposed? Okay, that motion carries. Item number 7 is a conditional use request by the Marshfield Clinic Health System for the construction of an approximately 1,700 square foot vestibule addition and the relocation of more than 5,000 square feet of parking area within a campus district and required to be permitted as a conditional use in accordance with the Marshfield Clinic's campus master plan located at 611 North St. Joseph Avenue, parcel 33-03228. And that's presented by Josh Miller.
Thank you. The campus plan for this area, for the clinic campus, was adopted in August of 2019. That plan included a number of projects and included the connector project that they're working on currently, identified a bunch of uses and parking and things like that. This proposed project was not identified in that plan. So absent a proposed project in a campus plan, or a project that is inconsistent with the campus plan, the property owner has the opportunity to submit a conditional use permit in lieu of consistency with the campus plan. So in that plan, the staff is allowed to administratively approve an addition of up to 1,200 square feet, either a principal structure or an accessory structure. They can also approve a parking structure of 5,000 square feet or less. When this plan is what they propose in this plan, there's two separate additions. One's a 900 square foot addition for an elevator bank attached to the emergency room, and the other one is a proposed addition of 1,651 square feet under the parking deck. And so it's coming out 1,651 square feet, but that does exceed the 1,200 square foot threshold. In addition to that, they are removing a number of parking stalls, which exceeds the 5,000 square foot threshold. So that's why this is coming before the Plan Commission. A little background, the entire project is the result of some planning for a future emergency room and urgent care center. Currently, the emergency room is located off of St. Joseph's Avenue on the main level. There's a parking deck with two levels. The main level comes off of is surface parking and has access off of St. Joseph's Avenue and Kelshed. The urgent care is over in the original clinic building off of Kelshed Street, further to the east of this property. So the plan is to combine both facilities or put both facilities next to each other in the hospital site, which makes a lot of sense. So the rationale is that there's often people go to urgent care when they should be in emergency or vice versa. And so having those two facilities next to each other is an efficiency of service. What they're proposing to do is move the emergency and urgent care to the lower level, so it would be under the lower level of the parking deck, and that's where the vestibule will be located. So if you are being a patient to the emergency room or urgent care, you would be coming in off of Cowshed now. You no longer would have access off of St. Joe's. You'd be coming into the hospital parking lot, taking a right, and then coming under the parking structure, and then that would be where the main entrance vestibule is. That's what the 1,600 square foot addition is. So that's really the background of the proposed changes, and that's the need for the addition and the parking structure changes. One thing I did want to note is they are changing the parking, about 1,600 and some square, or 6,900 square feet of parking. They're also restriping some to accommodate additional handicap stalls, and that's not included in that number. So I did want to differentiate that. So they're actually changing a little bit more than 6,900 square feet, but the additional changes are really restriping and to accommodate the handicap accessible stall. So when we looked at this map here shows the demo plan showing that the number of parking stalls that were there. There was some inconsistency between the demo plan, the parking study, and the campus master plan, what it all showed for parking. And some of the demo has already taken place, so we were not able to get an exact number, but the demo plan was an as-built plan, so we feel like that's pretty close to what were the current conditions prior to the start of the project. We showed that there to be 167 parking stalls. The parking study, which I do apologize, we did send out this afternoon. We had two parking studies. So we had the wrong one in the packet. That was the preliminary one, and then the narrative was sent out later today. So if you have questions on that, there are staff from the clinic here that can help respond to any questions related to that. So there was some inconsistencies on the number, but ultimately, the final number that remains is really what we would be looking at, which is 127 proposed parking stalls, plus two, if you go to the next map, plus two additional handicap accessible stalls and the hospital circular entrance area there. So for 129 parking stalls would remain. The clinic did submit a 2021 parking study that identified what the proposed capacity would be for parking in that both the lower level, upper level, and then a parking lot across the street, across Cowshed, and what the overall needs would be based on peak usage. And so even though they are removing anywhere from here, 38 to 23 stalls, they're still showing adequate parking for the usage. And I've been through there, and anecdotally, there often isn't a lot of available parking. Through surveys, they've identified that a lot of that is current staff parking, and their intent is to conduct additional enforcement, utilizing staff and security to limit on-site staff parking. So that would open up more parking for patients and visitors. And the purple parking lot really is not factored in this study or this analysis, but anytime you try to visit people or loved ones or at the hospital, it is a tight parking spot. There is limited parking there. However, this parking lot is simply the lower deck and the adjacent parking to it. When you look at the parking analysis, the urgent care peak demand generation is about 24 spaces at one given time. The emergency room peak demand generation is 14 spaces, so a total of 38 spaces, and they're providing 127. If there's additional overflow capacity, they have looked at providing a valet service for those that come into the emergency urgent care. Valet can take the vehicle and get it parked. They do have some proposed off-site parking across Cowshed that would accommodate an additional 23 to 28 stalls. If they found that this was in use, so greater demand, they could expand that area and relocate some of the staff parking in that area. Upper level, they don't feel the parking demand will change much once that gets built out. They would still see that the peak demand generation is about 74 spaces, again, once they get the staff removed. And the parking capacity right now is 99 spaces, would leave a available parking of about 25 vacant spaces at peak demand time. One thing I just did want to touch on with the Plan Commission is anytime we have a project that's generally an addition or a project of this nature, it goes to our development review team at the city. That's an internal meeting with different staff that would be reviewing it for engineering, emergency services, building inspection, planning and zoning, and utilities. And we all sit around a room with the applicant and talk through issues and concerns. Through this process, this project was submitted to the development review team, and we met with interim fire chief Pete Fletty, and he expressed some concerns, which I did highlight in the staff report. Again, his concerns are mainly the function of using an elevator for emergency services for the ambulance, and removing some of the ambulance parking that's adjacent to the ambulance garage, just off of St. Joseph's Avenue. So right now, the ambulance parking garage is going to remain where it is. You don't know about it. It's actually located on St. Joe's right before you enter the emergency room parking, surface parking. And they go into that parking garage, drop off patients, and then they drive through. It can fit up to 5 ambulances right now. And then once you get through the drive-through, there's some additional surface parking for the ambulances to kind of recombobulate. Because of the addition of the elevator, they would lose some of those spaces. They'd still have room for 5 ambulances in there. Chief Fletty's concerns, though, stem from, waiting for an elevator to drop off patients and getting patients to an emergency room, utilizing an elevator. And so he expressed those concerns. Having multiple ER staff in an ambulance garage is a concern. Would there be delays if there was a power outage? Things like that. I believe there's also a third elevator more internally if there were some issues or delays, but just wanted to, and there is some additional challenges with radio reception in the lower level. I think there is some challenges right now in the emergency room, but at a lower level, it's even more difficult. So he had recommended some bi-directional amplifiers for the area for radio service. So I just wanted to point that out. Ultimately, the way staff is viewing this request is we have to look at what the substantial evidence is to approve or deny something like this. The request is simply for an addition for a vestibule and a changes to the parking facilities. And looking at the substantial evidence, the addition is less than 1,700 square feet. Anything 1,200 square feet or less could be approved administratively. So 1,700 square feet is an additional 500 square feet. When you've got a campus of multi-millions of square feet of area, it's hard to say that that would be a detraction from the campus. And same with the parking. You're talking about 7,000 square feet of parking, losing anywhere from 38 to 23 stalls in a campus that has 1,000 stalls in the area. In addition, they provided a parking study that does justify the peak demand in what they are providing. So, there are some, obviously we talked about concerns with the overall layout of the emergency room, but when you look at it, they are the professionals when it comes to providing medical care, and city staff is not. I have tremendous respect for Chief Fletty's comments and agree with many of his concerns, but ultimately the Plan Commission's charges, the addition and the parking changes. So with that, we do recommend approval of the proposed addition and parking changes with the following conditions. The vestibule cannot exceed 1,700 square feet in area. Changes to the parking area, and I wanted to add this because I didn't include it in my staff report, but excluding restriping for handicap stalls may not exceed 7,000 square feet in area. The parking area below the deck must have a minimum of 100 parking stalls. They're proposing 127. The surface parking area, the surface parking area of the main hospital entrance must have a minimum of 25 parking stalls, which is the area just to the east under the deck. The campus master plan shall be submitted to the city for review prior to December 31st, 2022. They are currently working on a new campus master plan. In the absence of an adopted master sign plan, new signage for emergency room and urgent care changes shall be reviewed and approved by the Plan Commission. One of their approvals that they got for a recent sign plan was that they had to come back and do a master sign plan. This would give them an exception to do the emergency room sign, but it would still have to be reviewed by Plan Commission if they didn't have that master sign plan done. And then minor adjustments to the site plan may be approved administratively, provided no other exceptions are required.
All right. This also requires a public hearing, so I'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone here who wishes to comment? Public hearing. Anyone who wishes to comment? And going for a third time. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and entertain a motion. Motion by Mr. Rosendich.
Motion to approve.
Okay. Second by Mr. Kropilian. Is there any discussion? Mr. Pinker, I think you got your hand up first.
Okay. I have a number of concerns. I have the same concerns voiced by Chief Bloody. His concerns, I think, are very valid, and they certainly have significance for the entire operation. I recognize that we're dealing with a vestibule and the parking, but I think it's an important ancillary issue. Given the major changes that are going on, I do not like the fact that we do not have a sign plan included with this. Signage is extremely important. It seems to be an afterthought relative to what is going on. Parking across Cowshed Street is also a concern. Admittedly, there might be some sort of ferry service back and forth, but you're going to be up on a hill. You may have people that are disturbed, agitated, worried, and in spite of the fact that the clinic does a real good job of getting salt and sand out, you're coming downhill, you have to cross a street that has undefined amount of traffic. There's a stop sign on the downhill grade, and that can't be safe for people that have the need to get across to their family and friends that might be in urgent care or the emergency room. Looking at this, there's no traffic flow study, which staff says, it's moderate traffic, but we don't have a traffic flow study. We have a traffic study done in May of 2021. We don't have any reference, a numerical reference to other parking studies that have been done. We have no comparison and contrast with those. And a parking study in 2021 during a time when the facility may not be operating at in a full operational status. I don't view that as a valid study. Now, admittedly, this is going to be an advantage for the public, having the two facilities together. But I've got questions about those items, and I view those as deficiencies in the request. In addition, we have demolition that's already started, and we're getting conditional use permit request now after demolition has taken place. That shouldn't happen. This is one whole project. You're demolishing stuff, and now you're asking for the conditional use permit. That makes no sense. I look at my notes. I think I can justify voting no. I balance that against the potential improvements for clients of the clinic. And I am really troubled. I'm right on the edge. So if we do this on a roll call or by a voice vote, Josh, note my vote as present. I'm not going to vote to approve or disapprove.
Mr. Rosen.
I just had a question for, maybe the clinic can answer this. The concerns that Assistant Chief Letty had brought up, how are you going to address it? Is there a way we can get some feedback on that?
You step up to the microphone and then we can hear you over the sound system.
Hi, my name is Jim Lynn. I'm the Vice President of Facilities for Marshfield Clinic Health System. So would you mind repeating your question?
I just want to get some feedback of Assistant Chief Letty's concerns and how you plan to address those. I think that's going to
Right.
help Mr. Pinker answer the question,
Okay.
an opportunity to actually ask.
Yeah, fair question. First of all, we looked at several different ways to improve the emergency department and combine urgent care to provide better access. And also, our patients aren't very good at triaging themselves and determining which venue to report to. So we had a lot of people showing up at urgent care that should have shown up at the emergency department and vice versa. So by combining them, we look at providing better service and ensuring that patients are getting the right kind of care. So we looked at where the existing emergency department is today. It's on the second level of the hospital. And there was really no way for us to enlarge the emergency department in its present location. So we looked at the space below, which was largely occupied by administrative staff. And so with COVID and a lot of people working remotely, we determined that by reshuffling some of those requirements for staff, they could work from home, for example. We were able to actually capture a very large space on the first level of the hospital to be able to combine the urgent care and emergency department on that level. And but we were also concerned about access, just as the fire chief noted. So to overcome that problem, which is done quite frequently in urban hospitals, we installed 2 very large capacity trauma elevators. That's part of the plan. That's part of what's I think Josh showed on the floor plans. These trauma elevators are high capacity, high speed, backed up by emergency power. The ambulance garage is existing, and the new trauma elevators are going to be built adjacent to that existing ambulance garage. So we did some studies of how quickly patients could be taken out of an ambulance, put into the new trauma elevators, and then brought down to the first level, the new location. And I think the outcome of that was it only adds less than 20 seconds to the turn time. So knowing that that's a very minimal impact in terms of speed to getting into the emergency department, into a much better, larger, improved emergency department, we felt that was the right solution. And I think, as Josh mentioned as well, we do have a third trauma elevator, an existing trauma elevator. So if we, for some reason, we have a mass casualty event, we have that as an additional elevator as well. Also, patients, that are not arriving by ambulance are going to have an improved experience, because right now there really isn't much of a drop-off area in front of the existing emergency department entrance on the second level. The plan that we're working on has an improved drop-off with a larger curb area for patients to load and unload patients from their own vehicles on the first level. So hopefully that answers your
It does
question.
mine. Next question is for you, Josh. The build-out plan, demolition, and then asking for, I believe you alluded to it earlier, you do that, so then you kind of figure out the whole plan of what you're going to do at the end of it, right? So this is pretty typical in a big construction project like this, correct?
Not necessarily. I guess I don't exactly follow your question. So
Well, what I'm asking is, Mr. Pinker's not so happy about the demolition and then asking for approvals, but in a project like this that does occur.
it can, yeah, preferably, if they know what's going on prior to demoing parts of the project, you would submit a conditional use permit prior to that, because you want to make sure you have that in hand before you move forward with an expensive demo or construction project. So ideally, we would have the conditional use permit done before demo project. It didn't happen in this case, but we have seen that before. Demoing is a permitted use without any issues. This project did get a building permit prior to that, though. And what happened in this case was there's different kinds of building permits. One is the DSPS, which is Department of Safety and Public Service, and then the other one is a DHS permit, which is primarily for healthcare. When the DHS permit gets submitted, that often doesn't get a zoning review because it's basically it's a remodel and alteration, and that's what this permit was viewed as when it came through. So they did receive a building permit for the project, but then once we discovered that it was going beyond the limits of the current facility, changing the parking, we contacted them and said, wait a second, you need a conditional use to do this. So demo work had already started. They stopped that work because we informed them of this. They could have kept going at their risk, but they chose to stop because they needed a conditional use.
So it sounds like there was communication back and forth and they did the proper steps.
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Pinker.
When was the decision made to combine the two departments, and when were the plans drawn up? What was the date on the plan?
I don't have the exact date for you, but we started planning this project roughly a year ago. And we went through the entire design process, and as Josh alluded, we submitted to the Department of Health Services and other authorities having jurisdiction. And there was no intent for us to bypass any process for appropriate permits here.
Was there any prior discussion with the city regarding this project? The reason I'm asking that question is that even though the time span is 2017 through 2017 to 2020, there is a section in Section 6 of the Comprehensive Plan that clearly states one of the intents of that plan is to have communication between the medical center and the city for improvements. I just want to know, was this thing was being planned, was there any active discussion with the city to keep them informed and coordinated?
Yes. Yes, we actually sponsored tours of the medical center several months ago, and several different representatives from the city participated in the tours. And the emergency department urgent care project was one of the projects that was highlighted on the tour. And there are several other projects that are ongoing at the campus that were part of that tour as well.
Okay. Then there has to be a new campus plan.
That's being worked on right now.
Okay, now, because I was in great opposition to the way that it's going the last time it came around, is this campus plan going to take 3 years to develop, or are we going to have one within a year?
We are targeting having the campus plan completed by April 1st, and then we'll have some internal discussions, and then shortly after that, we anticipate submitting it to the city to replace or actually to update the previous master plan.
Josh will still vote present.
Just a comment on the tours. I don't have a question. They were amazing. We toured them in August, I believe it was. I know Nick was involved. I was involved. There was 2 other aldermen that were present as well. They gave us a whole layout of what they were going to do and what the plan was. So it was very informative, and I appreciate it.
Any other comment or question? Josh?
Yeah, and that has been great. I think communication is getting better. The challenge with the tour, and I was involved in the tour, so we were aware of that. With a tour, you don't see plans, you don't see how the footprint is going to change. So I guess at a staff level, we were aware that there was changes going on internally, not realizing at the time that there was going to be a footprint change or a parking change because that wasn't part of the tour. But I think the communication, for things like that have improved. We still have to improve probably when there's building plans done that need to, be reviewed by the city in a more, efficient manner, I guess we should say. But I think things are on the improvement side of things.
Anyone else? Okay, we have a motion to approve the conditional use permit with the conditions, exceptions that are listed there. All those in favor signify by saying aye. And anyone opposed? Okay, the motion carries. We'll move on to item number 8. A rezoning request by Narayana and Hema Murali to rezone a property from RH 35 Rural Holding Zoning District to SR3 Single Family Residential for the property located at 1216 North Lincoln Avenue, parcel 33-04324A, consisting of 51 acres, presented by Stephen Wiley, City Planner. Steve.
Thank you. So this is a rezoning request, as mentioned. You can see the subject site there outlined in blue, just to the west, actually, of the annexation that we just did, or had action for, I should say. So it is just south of West McMillan Street and on North Lincoln Avenue, and is actually on the northwest side of town, or of the city, I should say. You can see on that little inset map there, it is right there, circled in blue there, and on the border with the city of Marshfield and the town of Lincoln there. Next slide, please. So I should have mentioned, it is surrounded by a number of single-family properties to the south, the city of Marshfield, single-family properties and rural holding to the north and the east. And then, as mentioned before with the other items, some commercial properties to the northeast there. So the future land use map in the comprehensive plan recommends new neighborhood mixed use, which consists of a mixture of single-family neighborhood business, park space, etc. So there is some flexibility within that land use classification to allow for development as a subdivision. The applicant, the owners, are looking to maintain part of their parcel because they do have their single-family home that exists on that parcel currently. They would sell the remainder after doing the zone change for potential redevelopment. So that's why this zone request or zone change request is coming before us. Currently, it's zoned rural holding district. The minimum lot size is supposed to be 35 acres. So larger lot sizes, you'll see a lot of those on the edge of the city, et cetera. But it really doesn't lend itself well to developing like a single family subdivision, other developments types. So that's why they're looking to rezone it. That'd be the first step. Then they'd subdivide and sell part of it while maintaining their portion. A lot of the surrounding land uses or future land uses are residential, and then, as mentioned before, general commercial to the northeast there. Next slide, please. So with that, we are recommending approval of this zone change request to go from rural holding 35 to SR3, single family residential. We do believe that that would be consistent with the future land use recommendation and with the surrounding zoning. From there, you could direct staff to prepare the ordinance for common council consideration.
Okay, this item also requires a public hearing. I'll open the public hearing and ask if there's anyone who wishes to speak on this matter. Anyone wishing to speak? And going for a third time, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and I'll entertain a motion. Mr. Johnson, the motion. And Mr. Krapilian, second. I assume your motion is to approve. Okay. And a second. Is there any discussion on this matter? Mr. Pinker.
What's the timeline for development of this property? Because there's no water on the property. The present residence has well water according to the land description. And I believe there's also a sewer connector. but there is no water there or in the area at Marathon, Nelson.
Gotcha.
So to me, it would seem that development would hinge upon getting water down Lincoln Avenue. So what is the timeline? And then there's an additional question. Indicated in the comprehensive plan, there is a proposed road corridor. It's a oval-shaped road corridor within the rural holding area. So are any residences planned for or subdivided land on that oval, or is access being made directly from Lincoln Avenue? I have particular concern here about the water and whether or not property gets subdivided, somebody comes in and says, yep, I'm going to start building, and then there's no water up there. The nearest fire hydrant on Lincoln's at Ives, that's over 1,500 feet. And that's going to require 2 pumper trucks, one at the scene and then one to transfer water. There's a hydrant on the Parkway near McMillan. That, again, is approximately the same distance, about 0.3 miles. And obviously the people in the Marathon and Nelson area have got the same issue, that they don't have hydrants up there. But I'm concerned about that point. So what is the timeline for development, and where is the access point going to be?
Yeah, the timeline is really contingent upon whether or not the Lincoln Avenue water main project would go forward. Right now, staff is putting together a comprehensive list of possible ARPA fund projects that could be funded through the stimulus plan that will eventually have to get reviewed by council before it moves forward. And we would tie that into a capital improvement plan. A water main project extending from Ives up to the Nelson Marathon neighborhood and eventually looped to Veterans Parkway is part of that plan. So if that project does go forward, that would open this up for development. Absent that happening, the water service being provided, so the subdivision would take on a whole different course of action. If they were to pursue it, they would probably have, and I'm not even sure that we would allow a subdivision with just wells. The density would be too great, and we wouldn't want to see that happen. So I think the property owner is aware of that. His whole goal is to provide the rezoning as part of an encouragement to focus on that water main project. So if that water main does get, if this goes forward and he's got a plan and he's working on a plan for future development, that might incentivize the council saying, well, if we not only can we provide water to our residents in the city that don't have water on Nelson and Marathon, we can also provide additional development opportunities for this area and potentially loop the water service, which is vital for emergency services. So there would be obviously fire hydrants as part of that could serve land on both sides of Lincoln Avenue. As far as the access goes, the map I believe you're talking about is a future road street plan map, and it kind of shows a realignment of Lincoln Avenue to connect to, or a realignment of McMillan to connect to Lincoln Avenue, and that we'd have to see what the proposed subdivision layout would be. This rezoning really, until it gets rezoned, we're not talking about the plat at this point. But coming back with the plat, we'd have to look at what the rest of the comprehensive plan says for future development, and that was really more of an ideal setting. If we're not realigning McMillan Street, I don't necessarily know that access road would be a limiting factor, but it's something we would have to look at when the subdivision is being proposed.
How much of this property is wetlands?
The wetland delineation has been done. They've looked at that. There's also, because of a man-made culvert that runs under the street under Lincoln Avenue that's caused some artificial wetlands or man-made wetlands. So some of that could get exempted out by the DNR as far as ability to disturb. I don't know if we know the exact acreage of wetlands that there are, but there is a map that does show the wetlands, which is primarily to the west, where there's kind of a greenway corridor. Some of that could be preserved as like a conservancy area, tying into what Stephen said about a new neighborhood mixed use, which would have residential and then more conservancy. But I think There's certainly adequate land that could be developed in that site depending on the layout.
So how many developable parcels are there in that area?
I don't recall exactly.
How many single-family units do you expect we could be able to get out of this?
I think it was 60 or something like that in the neighborhood. And so it could be up to 60, but obviously it's going to depend on the wetland, final wetland layout, what can and can't be disturbed through the DNR permitting process, and then just the layout that would be approved by the Plan Commission and Council.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Comment? Okay, our motion is to approve the rezoning request. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, that motion carried. Item number 9. Conditional use request by the Central Wisconsin State Fair Association to amend a conditional use permit granted in 2016 and for exceptions to parking lot and landscaping requirements for the property located at 405 East 17th Street, parcel 33-03462AB, presented by Emmett Sinkowski, Associate Planner. Emmett.
Thank you, Mr. Bashel. So I want to make clear this one too. This isn't for the 17th, for redoing East 17th Street. This is for the parking lot that's in front of the hockey building. And the reason they're looking at this parking lot is because they're doing East 17th. So this whole thing kind of started in 2016. The fairgrounds came for a conditional use permit to build the Russell Wenzel Memorial Building, and there was a couple conditions on it. Most of them were to establish landscaping by a certain time frame, and then within 5 years of certificate of occupancy, they had to hard surface the driveway. So this was completed in 2017. 5 years would take us to 2022, and they're planning on doing East 17th this coming spring. So, and that's why they're here for this. And the city was gonna help them out with this at their expense, but seeing we're there, that's when we're gonna do it. So subject property, it's kind of central in the city, north of East 17th Street and east of South Cedar Avenue. The property is within a campus district for Central Wisconsin State Fairgrounds, and this one is owned by Central Wisconsin State Fair. It's bordered by single-family residential to the west, north, and south. And then to the east, it's by a city-owned campus development parcel. So currently the parking lot is mostly gravel and deteriorated and eroding pavement. Drainage on the site is less than ideal and typically kind of runs going southeast, and it has kind of washed out that swale pictures of. Then it runs down into the ditch at East 17th and sits there. Currently there is a 5 to 6 foot chain link fence, barbed wired, on there that is not in the greatest shape. So the proposed site plan would consist of 20 feet of pavement indicated by the gray right next to the right of way of East 17th. It is going to be 3 feet from the right of way where 10 feet is required. However, Plan Commission can grant exceptions to that setback. And there is going to be a proposed terrace as well. So with that terrace and setting it back a little further from the street itself, staff doesn't see any concerns with that. The previous conditional use had a buffer yard and street yard landscaping requirements. Staff is going to be recommending that on the west property line where it butts residential houses, that they put a buffer yard on that side. But however, talking engineering, and they do have plans to actually plant trees within the terrace. There is some stuff with utilities and driveways, but they said up to 50 trees could be planted on that, according to the forester. The fence along East 17th is planned to be replaced. According to the fairgrounds, they don't know if they want to go back with barbed wire or if they want to go to a more rigid fence with concrete base on the bottom. The purpose is the barbed wire and paid events. They're having people trying to jump the fence and stuff, and barbed wire really deterred that. The applicant is also requesting exception to the number of parking spots allowed without being broken up by landscape islands. And that would be 12 stalls is when a landscape island would be needed. And the biggest one would be just south of the hockey building on the right of way, and that's 21 stalls they have there. But overall, staff sees the reconstruction of the street and the addition of terraces and improvement of the parking lot to be very beneficial improvement to the area. And with that said, staff's recommend is to approve the approval to amend the conditional use permit granted in 2016 for Central Wisconsin State Fair and for exceptions to parking lot and landscaping requirements. with the following conditions. Within 2 years of the completion of the parking area, the applicant shall provide a buffer yard of 10 or more feet and an opacity of 0.5 along the west property line where affected by the parking area. Landscaping along the right-of-way of East 17th Street shall not be required. Parking landscaping, including landscape islands, shall be exempted from this parking area. The parking lot shall be no closer than 3 feet to the right-of-way East 17th Street, and minor site plan changes may be administratively approved, provided no other exceptions are required. And that's all I have on this one.
Okay, this item also requires a public hearing, so I'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone who wishes to comment on this matter? Any comments on this? And going for a third time. Seeing none, we will close the public hearing and I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Okay, motion by Mr. Pinker, second by Mr. Golden. And any discussion? I think it's an excellent opportunity to improve this area along with work that's already being planned, so I think it'll work well. Any further questions? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Seeing none, that motion carries. Item 10, a general development plan amendment request by Aaron Staub for the Prairie Run subdivision to allow changes to the previously approved residential land use mix and lot configuration. The request includes updates to the condominium plat, covenants, landscape plans, building models, and miscellaneous revision. The subject properties are located to the north of West McMillan Street. This is presented by Stephen Wiley, City Planner. Steve.
Thank you. So as mentioned, this is a general development plan amendment for the Prairie Run subdivision. Next slide, please. So you see the subject site there in blue again. Some of it's been built out, all currently zoned plan development, just to the north of West McMillan Street, that being the main thoroughfare through there. Some of the surrounding properties are zoned single family. The town of McMillan is to the north, and I believe to the west there, actually surrounding the Prairie Run subdivision, I should say, except for to the south. Next slide. So this one has kind of a long history. 2005, Plan Commission recommended and Common Council approved the GDP for Phase 1 of Prairie Run. In 2006, it was annexed into the city and designated as PUD GDP by ordinance. That was just an interim zoning classification to guide the design and layout of the subdivision. Some minor administrative changes occurred until 2012, when the developer obtained approval to amend the GDP and did an SIP, which you see on the screen, specific implementation plan, to allow multifamily apartment units, an increase in the condo expansion area. You can see there on the eastern side of the subdivision would be mostly single family uses, so a little bit less dense, lower density residential. On the south side, north of West McMillan Street, would be kind of that buffer of commercial properties and transition mixed use to the west of that. And then on the northwest side of the subdivision be a little bit more dense, two-family condos along with some 3 and 4-plex units. In 2014, a portion of Wildflower Drive was vacated and the street changed from a through street. So this is no longer current, obviously. On the eastern side of the subdivision, that through street became a cul-de-sac. And that was approved by variance. The developer did recently discuss with us at the city, because of changing market conditions, a desire to amend the land use mix of the subdivision so that he could continue build out of this subdivision. Because of that, we said that it would have to come back through the Plan Commission and Common Council as a GDP amendment. Next slide. So this map, unfortunately, is a little bit hard to see on the screen. The numbers are keyed in, and it's in your staff report too. And I'm just going to go a little bit into depth on this to highlight some of the main changes that are proposed. One thing, the street layout is going to remain the same at this point. Staff recommended that the developer maintain the original plat layout because the roadways were developed and the design of the infrastructure was completed during the initial phases of the subdivision. So for simplicity, they're going to be focusing on the land use mix and some of the lot configurations. So going through this map, number 2 on the map, if you have your staff report in front of you, or if you can see it on your screen in front of you, the duplex condos in block 4 and 6 would be changed to 7 single-family condos. So again, reducing the density a little bit due to the market. The pad layout for those condos is shown on the next page of your staff report. We can stay on this map for now. And there are some setbacks proposed. Those can be clarified through the SIP process, which will happen later. For right now, moving on to number 3, the duplex condos in block 5. So looking down at the south portion of this map here, those would become 2 single-family condos, or actually, yes. Or actually, no, excuse me. They're on the northwestern, sorry about that. Item 3, those would become single-family rather than the duplex condos that were originally proposed. Number 4, so that's more towards the southern portion. The triplex condos would be changed to 2 duplex condos. So going from 3-unit to 2-unit. 5 to the south of that, southernmost part of this that's on your screen here. The expansion area block 7 would be 4 duplex condos with the layout shown. Number 6, there is a single-family condo that is not shown on this, but it is in place of one of those duplex condos, more towards the northern part of that map. That exists already, and they are going to maintain that condo, obviously, but the owner of that will purchase a little bit more than 19 feet of land area to add to their property. Number 7, that property is currently multifamily with 1 existing 4-unit townhouse. That again is more towards the south part of this. So jumping around a little bit. That property will be included in the revised condominium plat. 8, future annexation of the property to the north of this subdivision would be done in the next year or so, according to the developer. Number 9, this property will be single-family homes. So that's just to the east of those single-family condos that would be proposed. Single-family homes that would be accessed likely from a private access drive, which would be part of, would be included as an easement for these properties. And then 10, to the far east of this, these properties would remain single-family homes per the layout of the original plat and shown in some of the CSMs that are in the packet. There would also be a neighborhood park that I'll get into a little more detail in a minute. So that kind of rounds out what they're looking to do as far as the land use mix. As part of the PD process, they have to provide density breakdowns of the proposed subdivision. So it did decrease a little bit, and the final density would be about 5.1 dwelling units per acre. So a little kind of medium density residential. Moving on, so that there is in the staff report, and that gets into a little bit more detail as far as the condo layouts, and there are some setbacks, they're hard to see here. Again, those will be finalized in the SIP process. Next slide. This was mislabeled in the staff report. It is not a condo plat, as the staff report says. It is a single-family plat. So these would be single-family homes. These would be 8 lots just to the east of the condos. And these were the ones that were mentioned before. So they're looking to plat this out for development. 2 CSMs are proposed. On the left, those are 4 existing parcels, single-family. On the northern portion of the subdivision, there is a dotted line that I believe signifies the original northern property line of those parcels. As part of the CSM, they would get a little bit more land area for those 4 lots. On the right, those parcels, some of those lot lines would be reconfigured. Outlot 1 would be a public park. It's a little bit more than an acre. The public park or green space would be dedicated to the city. There's a 15-foot easement or access, I should say, that would be, that would afford access from Prairie Drive there to the west to that park. And then there would also be access from the cul-de-sac on Sunflower Street down to that park. Lot 7 would be created. Currently, Outlot 1 and Lot 7, that area is just one unplatted parcel or unsubdivided parcel. So these would be subdivided from that. And those would be single-family parcels other than the outlot there. Next slide. Future land use map. So we looked at the comprehensive plan. A number of land uses are recommended for this subdivision. Low density, medium, and high density residential, more for the center and the northern, the western, eastern parts of the subdivision. So the bulk of it would be residential in terms of recommended land use. Again, as sort of a buffer between the residential, the less intense residential uses on the north and West McMillan on the south would be general commercial, and some of that is already commercial. And then there would be transitional mixed use on the western part of the subdivision towards the south there. So it kind of transitions in terms of land use from more intense commercial and mixed use to higher density residential, and then into medium and low density residential. And we do believe that with the comprehensive plan, there is some flexibility in the recommended land uses to accommodate the shift in the land use mix proposed by the developer. We do think that what is proposed is consistent with the land use recommendation. Next slide. So just recapping the land uses, as mentioned before, and these tables are from the staff report. Next slide. So again, just to recap, the developer will maintain the original road layout. Land use mix is consistent with the comprehensive plan. Number of single-family condos would increase from 0 to 9. Two-family would slightly decrease from 30 to 26. Three-family units would decrease from 9 to 3. Four-family would increase from 0 to 8. And there would be a slight increase in commercial space, again, with the residential density of 5.1 units per acre proposed. With these reduction in density, we did discuss as staff this stormwater. That was designed for a higher density that was originally proposed as part of this, the original approval for the subdivision. With the decrease in density, we anticipate fewer impervious surfaces, and hence, you know, with the stormwater infrastructure already designed for a higher density, we think it'll be beneficial. It should be able to accommodate, unless the city engineer would see otherwise, and he would review it, but I'd be surprised if we would have issues because the original infrastructure was designed for a slightly higher density and for more units. Just want to touch really briefly architectural features. Building elevations were included in the original and subsequent approval. The developer has not proposed changes. Any subsequent like major deviations from the original or the 2012 SIP approval would come back through Plan Commission. Same thing for landscaping. Parkland dedication. The Parks, Recreation, Forestry Committee did review that outlot. We presented that to them at their meeting last week on the 9th, and they were supportive of the dedication as proposed. So that was approved by the committee and is consistent with the comprehensive outdoor recreation plan. The developer had pretty positive response from residents, according to what we were told. They did run this through their board of directors, through the condominium association board of directors and homeowners association. As far as staff is aware, the only existing property that would be affected would be the single family condo at 1927 Pheasant Run Drive, where the owners would purchase an additional 19.1 feet of property to the south. And with that, the next slide, we are recommending approval of the GDP amendment as presented, and with the condition or with the ability to approve minor changes as long as, you know, they're not going to need major exceptions from zoning standards, et cetera.
Okay, this requires a public hearing as well, so I'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone who wishes to comment in the public hearing? Okay, I'll ask you to step up to the microphone.
My question, Aaron, I didn't, what would be the next section that would be developed there? That you said, what would be the next section that would be developed? You said 8, I didn't see 8 on the map.
Could you provide your name and address?
Oh, sure, Kevin Fedorowski, 1835 Pheasant Run Drive.
Okay,
Sure.
Actually, there's no new section being developed. All of this was in the original PUD, all 40-some acres. There's the section to be developed would be north of the property line that was shown on the maps that Stephen had shown here. In fact, that map works well. You can see this is just the condominium part of the PUD, proposed PUD, which is pretty similar to what was proposed originally, except that we made some changes from duplex to single family, from triplex to two family, and also added a fourplex, two fourplex condominium units and some additional duplex condominium units. So does that answer your question?
It's the northwest.
Yeah, it'd be north of basically where, since you're a resident of Prairie Run, you know where the pump house is.
Yeah.
And it would be slightly north of there is really would be the property line for this Prairie Run subdivision.
Thanks.
okay, sir, does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, anyone else who wishes to comment? Going twice, 3 times. Seeing none, the public hearing is closed, and I'll entertain a motion. Motion by Mr. Rosendich.
Motion to approve.
Okay, and a second by Mr. Golden. Discussion. No discussion, no questions? In that case, we will move on to voting. All those in favor of approving the proposed general development plan and general development plan amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Seeing none, that motion carries. Item number 11, the annual development and zoning administrators report presented by Emmett Sinkowski. Emmett.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Paschal. So each year we've been putting together a report, activities, whether it's plan commission activities, building permits activities, typically put together in January, then either February or March, we take it to present to you. Natalie Deal, our administrative assistant, and myself worked to put this together from our reporting procedures, or from our reporting system. So items in this report are plan commission, summary of actions, comparisons compared to 2008, and a report of development activities for 2021 as well. So these are what we did for plan commission in 2021. There was one item that had no action, and it was a rezoning request because there wasn't a motion for it. And then common council later did not approve it. Another thing to note, most of the miscellaneous items, they really didn't have approval on them. A lot of them were just for your review. And whether it's 62 or 23, I'm pretty, the only one that was approved by plan commission was the bicycle and pedestrian plan. Okay, so compared to 2008, when we have records of these are a breakdown of each item reviewed since 2008. In 2021, there are fewer for conditional use permits, rezonings, and annexations. A lot of this because we did make some changes to the zoning code in 2021, which relaxed the standards for like garages and such like that, so we didn't grant as many exceptions on that. But there were more requests for zoning ordinance amendments and alternative sign permits and subdivisions. So this is some building permit information I've been collecting since 1978. Since 1978, the way they used to do it by paper and books has changed. They moved to computer after that, and the process has changed. So typically they're pretty good. So when they have estimated value on this, I want to make a note that this value is what the applicant puts on the permit. And some of them, such as decks and such, they got the wood from their dad or something, so they just put 0 on it. So that's probably the most skewed on it. So I wouldn't say that necessarily says how much is being put into it. But otherwise, it's, I mean, for new homes and stuff and additions and stuff, it's fairly accurate. So then this was included in there in the report too. It's a new construction by type. For 2021, new single-family homes, new non-residential, and new multifamily all went down from 2021. New 1 and 2 family also went down. But however, residential additions did go up in 2021. Now, this was the same trend as 2020. The blue line is the estimated value per permit. That's the average, what the average new home permit was. And then the red is the number of permits. Obviously, the price per permit went up, and then the number of homes went down. I did look into this a little bit. One way you can attribute that as well is in 2020, there was some smaller homes that went up, so they didn't have quite the value as what they've been doing now. Regardless, it's kind of following the same trend. So then this is the value of all 1 and 2 family permits. It's cumulative value for each permit that was out through the year from what the applicant put on the application. So that was total in there. This number did increase in 2021, or it did decrease from 2021 to 21. And this is likely due to the number of new 1 and 2 family homes being built, or as the estimated value increase. And that's all I have on this. Does anyone have any comments, recommendations? I did try to change it up a little this year by adding some pictures and colors. If you guys have any recommendations, I can go crazy with it too. So.
Mr. Pinker.
Not a recommendation, more or less a request to anybody that's listening. On the summary of Plan Commission actions, there was one item, historic preservation and certificate of appropriateness. The Historic Preservation Commission is currently seeking nominations for our Historic Preservation Stewardship Award. So if anybody knows of a property owner or a developer that's doing an excellent job in terms of historic stewardship, either with land or structure, you can submit a nomination. Stephen Wiley, staff liaison.
Thank you. Any other suggestions, questions, comments?
Again, because we did do a lot of fee schedule changes and consolidate a lot of permits too at the beginning of this year that we approved January. So I mean, that does change the numbers a little bit, but I don't think it's enough to really make a difference. But going forward, come 2022, like it's gonna be very spot on for changes and stuff that's been done.
And Josh, I'm glad to see that there's a trend of an upswing since you've become the economic development coordinator. Okay, we'll move on to item number 12. Staff updates, and
Do you have any?
I do.
Yeah, I have one, I guess.
I assume that yours is the same as mine, so I'll let you present it.
This is my last staff as Plan Commission, or last Plan Commission meeting as staff for the city of Marshfield. I have taken a position with a private firm, but certainly appreciate the efforts of the Plan Commission. You guys volunteer to do a thankless job oftentimes, and it's not an easy job in some cases, but certainly appreciate the members here. Some members have been here most of my time as a staff person. So I've had an opportunity to take a different position with a firm, and so got to jump on opportunities when they come. But certainly miss working with you guys and miss working for the city. But we'll be turning the reins over to Emmett and Stephen for a little while till we find a replacement for my position. But certainly keep up the good work and appreciate your guys' service to the community. Plan Commission.
And I just want to recognize Josh for his years, 12 years, I believe you've been with the city as
And I think
planner.
almost 150 Plan Commission meetings, so that's enough.
As a planner and as the economic development coordinator for the past 4 years, and you won't find a nicer guy, that's for sure. Take that position. So congratulations on your new position, and we're going to miss you.
Thank you.
Are there any items for future agenda? Josh?
I guess I missed it on the staff update one. The city just released the facade and building improvement program for downtown. That is a program that we offer a 50-50 match to assist property owners to either do improvements to the exterior of the building or do a conversion from an interior of a building to convert to a new restaurant or new apartment unit. So it's an exciting program we've been running for, I think, 13 years now, and we've seen dramatic changes in the downtown, a significant investment, both private and public, but it's a wonderful program. Stephen is going to be taking that over, and so just if you are a downtown property owner or business owner and have questions about it, the information is now available on the city web.
Thank you. Any other items for future agendas?
Future agendas, we'd be talking about bringing back the zoning code. Finally, pushed to get a review of it, so we'll be bringing that back to release it to the public. We're looking to do a full repeal replacement of the code because there's just been a lot of changes over the years. We will likely be bringing back the chicken ordinance in the future. I have an update to the council next week, and so the chickens may be in our future.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Quentin, second, or adjourned?
Who seconded that?
Chris, I think, waved his hand there to second that.